We have invited an outstanding individual to share her experience in the wilderness with us. She is the first person in our motherland to include her name in the list of rare persons who experienced the greatest view from the top of the world. She is none other than the women's rights activist, mountaineer, and rock climber, Ms. Jayanthi Kuru-Utumpala. Welcome, and the audience is yours to address.
Thank you so much for inviting me to this event. It's really a pleasure to be back with the Mora Hiking Club. I remember back in maybe 2017 also, I was there with my climbing partner to share the story of climbing Mount Everest with the students at the time. So it's great to be back here again with hopefully, I suppose, a new batch of students. So what I want to do today actually is to share some photographs and take you through this entire journey. Give me a minute to quickly share my screen. So just stop my video for a moment. I hope everyone can see my screen. Well, if you can't see the screen, just shout, okay? Yell out. Okay, so what I want to do is actually share the story of climbing this mountain, this big mountain, and take you to the top of the world and back down with me, and try and share a few of the life lessons that I learned personally through this huge journey. Right? It really changed my life in many ways. So of course, Mount Everest, of climbing this mountain, has been for me a childhood dream. It was something that I wanted to do since I was about 8 years old, believe it or not. And now when I think back, I can't even imagine that I actually made it. I never thought it would ever be possible because for many reasons. I mean, and I remember at that age, it's not something you might share with everyone because it sounds a little bit mad, right? It sounds crazy. It's like, imagine if your dream was to go to the moon, how many of you would tell that to your friends? They're going to think, are you mad? Are you mad, right? But that was the kind of dream that I had. And it was something I carried throughout my life. And I mean, the first part of this talk, I want to talk about the fact that there was a lot of planning and preparation. It wasn't something that you could just wake up and say, okay, tomorrow I want to climb Everest. It doesn't happen like that. It is a journey that has taken many lives. It is a journey that people don't come back from. And it was something that needed lots of training and preparation. So for me, I think personally, the training, I would think began in 2003 when I first did a mountaineering course in the Indian Himalayas. There are two main schools in India, and if any of you are interested, I can definitely type in the names at the end of this talk. But those courses teach you all the basics of rock climbing, ice climbing, of rope knots, crevice rescue, how to rescue someone or yourself from a crevice if you fall into the ice, the gaps in the ice, mountain first aid, how to stay alive on the mountain. Because as you saw in that initial clip that was shared, there's no oxygen, so it's quite easy to get sick and die on the mountain. So all these things were taught in that first course. It was a 1-month course that I did in 2003, immediately after my first degree, which I did in India. My degree was, I went to Delhi University, and immediately after the course that I did there, I went and did this 1-month course, right? Anyway, so that's where I think my training began, and then over the years, just climbing as much as I got the opportunity overseas and in Sri Lankan. And then it was in 2011 that I met my climbing partner, Johan Pires. So someone actually said, oh my gosh, you are so crazy about mountains. I have to introduce you to my friend, Johan, because he's also mad over mountains. They said, so I was introduced to him. So the two of us actually climbed the mountain together in 2012. It's a mountain called Island Peak, which is in Nepal. And that's when I first got to know him. That was about a 3-week journey. It's about 6,000 meters. And then I told him one day I would like to climb Everest. Actually, in this photograph, the picture, the mountain you can see in the background is Mount Everest, right? So it's beautiful, as you can see. But we had to also then get to know each other as a part, as if he was my climbing partner. Teamwork was essential, right? And when we climbed Island Peak together, we realized, okay, we gelled. We could work as a team. We managed to survive for 3 weeks together despite all the hardships. And so then when I told him one day I want to climb Everest, I said, would you join me? He actually said yes. And so then we thought, okay, let's try climbing another mountain together. So the next year in 2014, we climbed Kilimanjaro, which is in Africa, as you know. And then we thought after that also we made it to the top and we came back alive. So after that, we thought, let's try to climb Mount Everest in 2016. Let's attempt, right? So after that, we had to also then start training. I mean, we had anyway been training, but once we really decided in 2014, after we came back from Kilimanjaro, that in 2 years' time we're going to do this, we had to start a training schedule for both of us. So in Colombo, we would meet at least, I think it was almost 3-4 times a week. We'd meet at Independence Square and do our training together at 5:30 in the morning. Then go to get home or go to work, shower and change, get to work, finish work. And then on Fridays, basically, we would go to Mora because we didn't have snow mountains, obviously, in Sri Lanka. We don't have them, but we do have many resources. So we thought about what we could do with the resources that we have in Sri Lanka, and we have so many beautiful places. So we went to Norelia and we were doing interval training, running up and down, Pidurutalagala, Kirigalputta, and Purupulapata, our first 3 highest mountains. That was a part of our training. So we would stay there the weekend, come back on Sunday night, back to work on Monday. So all this in not that we didn't have any other work to do. This is just a hobby, right? So we had to find that time. Sometimes we went out and got back home late, we went for a wedding, came back home late. It didn't matter. In the morning, we had to work out, we had to meet each other, and that commitment was important. That we had to train together in order to, if we wanted to climb this mountain. Okay, so then finally, we also had to get many sponsors. Without sponsors, this journey would have been impossible. But finally, our journey began in Nepal. From Kathmandu, we take a small flight to a place called Lukla, which is a small airport. Some of you may have heard it. Some of you, if you have been to Everest Base Camp, you may have heard it as well. But from Lukla, the journey to Everest Base Camp begins. And it's a 2-week journey. Sati dekak yanawa, Lukla in the Everest Base Camp, right? It takes 2 weeks to get to Everest Base Camp. By foot, walking, not helicopter only from Kathmandu to Lukla. From there, walking 2 weeks. So these are the walking trails. You can see the yaks are carrying all the goods and even our bags. We have to carry like our day packs. But there are no roads. It's all by foot. You can see the bridges. So you walk 10 to 12 days, right? 10 to 12 to 14 days. And then we arrive at Everest Base Camp, which looks like this. Now, this was something that we had to also get used to. I remember when we arrived at Everest Base Camp, it was around the Sinhala New Year, maybe 12th, 13th of April. And there was Wi-Fi at base camp, one of the luxuries here. And I remember people sending us pictures of the chamomile and but we didn't have any of that. And I remember feeling quite homesick. And the thought that crossed my mind was that this was now going to be our home for another 6 weeks. Right? It took us 2 weeks to get to Everest Base Camp, but this is now our home for another 6 weeks, because to climb Mount Everest, it takes 2 months. And that was not an easy thought. That wasn't easy to think about. 2 months in conditions like this. Can you see in the photograph, there's nothing green, no grass, no trees, no plants, nothing. Because nothing grows at this height, at 17,500 feet, about 5,000 something meters, right? Because at this point, there's only 50% oxygen in the atmosphere. Wherever you're sitting, anywhere in Sri Lanka, there's 100% oxygen, right? But at this height, at 17,500 feet, there's only half the amount of oxygen we have here. So it's a very hostile environment, very cold, about minus 20 degrees Celsius. Now, let me explain why it takes 2 months, because a lot of Sri Lankans find it hard to understand why it takes 2 months to climb a mountain. Because if you go on any hiking trail in Sri Lanka, any mountain you can climb in a few hours and come back down, right? And it's beautiful, but it just never takes 2 months to climb anything. So just to explain why it takes 2 months here, at the bottom of this photograph, you can actually see, maybe I'll try playing this. So we start at base camp. Oh, maybe not. Sorry. Okay. So we start at base camp and the triangle at the bottom. Unlike any other journey, you can't just go camp 1, 2, 3, 4 and you can't go to the top in one go, right? You start at base camp, we have to do these rotations. So once we go to base camp, then we walk up to camp 1, we stay one night there. Then we have to come back down to base camp. Then we do our second rotation, camp 2. So once again from base camp, we walk up to camp 1 and then we go up to camp 2. And then we come back down to camp 1 and then all the way back down to base camp. And then we also have the third rotation from base camp. We go up to camp 1, then we stay a night there. Then we go to camp 2, we stay one night there. And then we actually go to camp 3 and we stay a night there as well. And once we stay a night at camp 3, then again we have to come back down to base camp, right? So it's really crazy now when I think about that. I can imagine why people think I'm mad. Because it's not, you have to keep doing it over and over again because there is a scientific reason. Because at base camp, there's only 50% oxygen. At camp 3, there's only 30% oxygen. So only when you go up and down the mountain that your body can actually survive in that atmosphere, because your body produces more red blood cells. If there are any science students in the audience, maybe you might have learned about this in your class. I only learned about all of this while climbing Everest. I'm not a science student, so that's why. But the idea is that when we go up and down, our body produces more red blood cells, so that even with less oxygen, we are able to walk without carrying oxygen cylinders. Only after camp 3, we actually start using an oxygen mask and a cylinder which we carry in our backpack, right? But up to that point, we have to just keep walking up and down. Now, the most difficult part of these rotations is that between each camp, there is a time limit. So from base camp to camp 1, we are told by our guides, you have to do it in maximum 7 hours. If you do it in the first shot, great. First shot fail, if you fail the first shot, you get a second chance. Second chance fail, that's it. If you fail your second chance, you're out, right? You don't get a third chance because they don't have time for you. It's very complex, and what it means is you're not fast enough, which means it's not safe for you. So therefore, you have to go back home, train harder, and come back again. So with so many sponsors, we had about 10 or 15 sponsors. There was also a lot of pressure. Failing was not an option, right? But our safety was also important. So we also needed to know when to turn back. Anyway, so just keep in mind that time limit, just like your exams, there's a time limit between each journey, right? Between each camp that we had to somehow make sure that we stuck to that time. Then a little bit about life at base camp. So we went with a mountaineering company who actually provided all the logistics, the food, the guides, the high altitude climbing guides, all the oxygen cylinders. We had to take our own gear, but all the logistics for 2 months, the tents, the sleeping bags, all that we had to take, but the main sort of logistics. So on the left-hand side, you can see the pictures. There's like noodles and chicken and fried rice and chicken. This was all like really nice, lots of starch protein food at base camp because it's a huge camp. On the right-hand side, you see a picture of one of our guides, Sherpa guide, who's heating up food. You can see the food in the packet. And we put ice in the pan and we melt the ice and heat up the packet. But there's no taste, there's no salt, no chili. But we had to eat this because that was all there was, right? Right? You couldn't walk the next day if you didn't eat this. You had to have this. That was all the food that was available. There are no shops you can go shopping and buy anything. So we had to also get used to our life on the mountain. wasn't easy. Then a little bit about toilets, because a lot of people always have questions about what do you do on the mountain. So on the left-hand side is a picture that you see of the toilet. Now these toilets, thankfully, you can stand up inside them. And so there's privacy, it's wonderful, there's a tent, you can close the zip. And if you look at the picture on the right-hand side, there's a toilet seat, and there's a nice little cloth lining on the toilet. So it's very comfortable to sit down. There's toilet paper, wet wipes, hand sanitizer. So you can really relax again in the. But when you go to Camp 1, now that is base camp. This is the toilet at Camp 1. And that is Johan, who's actually, he's only posing for the photograph. So this toilet, ice, there's a small, short ice wall. And behind this wall, there is a bucket, like a 5-liter paint bucket, 5-liter paint bucket. And the bucket would say, let's do it. So we had to go behind this ice wall and do what we had to do. So again, I'm also sharing this to say that we had to also adapt to our new home. Like, because I could say one day I can't go to the toilet. I'm too shy to go there. Everyone can see me. One day I can go to the toilet, maybe 2 days even. But 2 months without the toilet, it's impossible, right? So we had to get used to this. This was life for 2 months on the mountain. At least not 2 months, 6 weeks, 1.5 months on these conditions, ice and snow only. So just to, I hope you understand that for me, if I didn't get used to that life, you couldn't go up, you had to then go down. And I'm sure for many of you who are now at university, I mean, you are also studying, but with COVID, it's an entirely new world. Things have changed so much. I can't even imagine. I mean, there are so many challenges we have to face, but it's important to adapt to this new lifestyle that we are leading, however hard it is, because that's the only way, right? If this is what's in front of us, we have to somehow embrace it and manage to get through this world together, right? So on the mountain as well, teamwork was essential. Because there's no phone signal, only base camp had any Wi-Fi. Beyond that, nothing. So no phones, no data, nothing. So we had to chat to each other, play games, laugh, joke, talk, spend time during the daytime and find things to do, because you have to, in the daytime, sometimes there's nothing to do. There's no phones to play games or even chat or anything on Facebook or Instagram. So you have to actually really work as a team and keep each other going as well. This is actually the Kumbu Ice Fall, which we pass once we pass base camp. You can see the pictures. So it's a huge area with lots of big pieces of ice. And we had to cross this each time we go from base camp to Camp 1. We had to cross the Kumbu Ice Fall. Imagine like a big bucket of ice and some black ants inside. So we were those ants in this huge bucket of ice. And in many places, we had to cross the Kumbu Ice Fall on these big ladders. You can see here in the photographs, which were across huge crevices, or sometimes going up or across. And I was also very scared. It's not something that, I mean, people might think I didn't have any fear, but I did. I was very scared crossing these ladders because I knew that many people would accidentally get their feet caught on the rung of the ladder. You can fall into the crevice. And many people have died like that as well. Because sometimes the spikes on your boots can cut the rope accidentally, the way you fall. And that's it, no one can recover your body as well. So all the time we had to really focus on what we were doing. So here's a small picture of Camp 1. I have a tiny video, let me see if it plays. Yeah. So just so you get a sense of what Camp 1 on Everest looks like. These are our tents that we sleep in. And these are some friends in our team. They're doing push-ups because I told you we had to find something to do, right? When it's daytime, so we do all sorts of crazy things just to spend time. But it's a beautiful scenery, as you can see. So it's a very small camp. And Mount Everest is behind that mountain. You can't quite see it from here, right? Okay, so then we have Camp 2, which is slightly bigger at 21,000 feet. And then Camp 3 at 23,500 feet. Now here I want to quickly share a small story, because at this point, I basically remember I told you about the timing. කාල සීමාවක් තියෙනවා කියලා මම කිව්වා, that there's a timing between each camp. Now on this day, I was told from camp 2 to camp 3 takes 9 hours maximum. You can't spend, no one can spend more than 9 hours. So I started walking with my guide, and each of us walks with our own guide. After base camp, each climber has a high altitude Sherpa guide, because that is also the safest form or the safest way to climb this particular mountain, because of high altitude sickness, which is quite common on Everest. So anyway, so I was walking with my guide, and at some point I didn't even realize the time. I had to turn back because it was, I think, 9 hours had passed, and I was not even, I had only just got to halfway mark from camp 2 to 3. තව පැය 3ක් වගේ යන්න තිබුණා. I told my guide, let me go, I'll try and go, and he said, no, it's too late, you have to go back down. You can't go today. So I had to go all the way back down to camp 2. By this time, Johan and all my other friends had gone to camp 3. And I was really upset and disappointed, because they, of course, said you have one more chance. But I was wondering, how do I go any faster? I kept thinking maybe my body is too small. Maybe my legs are too short. I'm about 5 feet, 1.5 inches tall. So that's not very tall. So I thought that I'm too short. I can't walk as fast as tall people have long legs. You know, they can walk faster. They have bigger lungs. And I kept thinking maybe I'm just not strong enough. And then my biggest fear was that I knew that I would be given one more chance, but I was worried that if I failed the second chance also, I would have to come back to Sri Lanka without climbing Mount Everest. And my biggest fear about that was that if I come back to Sri Lanka without climbing Everest, what would people say in Sri Lanka about Everest and girls or women climbing Everest? කවුරුත් කියන්නේ මේක අමාරු ගමනක් කියලා. People will say, no one's going to say it's a difficult journey. People will say, oh, you're a woman, that's why you couldn't make it. Why did you even try? And I had people telling me this even before I went to climb Everest. They had asked, Johan, why are you going with a woman? She will fail and you will also fail, right? And other people have asked me, you're so tiny, how can you climb Everest? When we were looking for sponsors, it was very difficult because no one believed. They looked at us and laughed, right? They thought we're just two stupid, crazy people who think they can do this. No one from Sri Lanka has done this. Look at them. They don't even look like athletes, right? So we had all sorts of comments before climbing Everest. And I had comments because I was a woman. And for me, that was something that really pushed me on the mountain, because I know that we all have skills, regardless of our gender. It doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman. We all have different skills and different talents. And if you are passionate about something, don't ever give up just because of these gender stereotypes, or because someone says, oh, you're a woman, you can never do that, right? Because that's all nonsense. We need to break those stereotypes, because those rules only prevent us from being the best we can be. So for me, the next day I woke up and I thought, there's no way I'm not going to climb this mountain, because I have to go back to Sri Lanka. People will say, I know, you're a girl, you can climb it. But when I woke up the next morning, I just told myself, I'm somehow going to do this. And that's when I actually learned that it's also about mental strength. That when we have to do something like this, sometimes we think we can't. But if you think you can't, then you really can't. If you have worked hard for something, the other missing piece of that jigsaw puzzle, the little thing balance left to do, is to actually tell yourself that you can do it. You have to tell yourself in your mind and your heart and believe that you can. And for me, that was the only thing that worked. Now when I think back, I don't know how I made it. I had to cut down 3 hours of my time. I only know that was because of my mind. Right? So that's also how I learned about mental strength. That's Mount Everest, something that Mount Everest taught me, and it's changed my life in so many ways. So I hope that's something that you will also try. If you try to do something and it hasn't worked, try again, try harder, and always remember, if you worked hard, if you practiced, trained, you have to tell yourself that you can. Right? That makes a huge difference. So moving on from here, at Camp 3, this is my tent mate. She's from Australia. Her name is Kerry. So there are 2 people per tent. And At Camp 3, we had to actually start using oxygen cylinders to sleep, to eat, to walk every single minute of the day. So this is us. We just got to Camp 3. They gave us a cylinder. We are both sharing one cylinder. You can see it in the middle of the picture. And I remember at this point, just before this picture was taken, I was almost in tears because when I put the oxygen mask on, I couldn't breathe. I felt suffocating. I thought I was going to like pass out, faint. And my tent mate said, we just got to get used to it. There's no way. If you don't get used to that, you can't go up. And that's the thing. I mean, even now when we wear our mask, many of you probably feel, oh, but actually that is a reality. We all need to wear our masks now, however hard, because if we are to stop the spread of COVID. So it's not easy at times, but sometimes we have to do things that are miserable, and that's life, right? If you want to keep moving and the trail doesn't end, as the motto of the hiking of Mora Hiking Club, you have to keep going. Then we have Camp 4, which is a death zone. It's called the death zone for many reasons. Main reason being that your body slowly begins to deteriorate, as in it slowly begins to die. So in a sense, we don't spend too much. We don't spend one night at Camp 4. We get to Camp 4, and we get there by 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The same night, we start our journey to the summit. So because I was the slowest person in my team, in the entire team, I was always the last person to get to the camp. Remember I told you even at Camp 3 I struggled. So, but I made it on time, finally, even second chance, but I was always the last because I was also the smallest person, smallest in size. So when we got the day of our summit day, our guides actually said, Jayanthi, why don't you go ahead? You go 1 hour early. Johan can come 1 hour later because we want to be on the summit together. So we can take a selfie and a picture with the flag together. So I left Camp 4 at 8 p.m. that same night, and Johan left 9 p.m. And then, so Johan continued walking after he started at 9 p.m. and then he got to this point called the South Summit. It's at 8,400 meters. Everest is 8,850 meters now. So he got to this point, so about 450 meters more. I mean, 400 vertical meters, so about another 3 hours more from where he is to the summit. But he got to this point and his Sherpa actually checked his cylinder and said, I'm very sorry, you have to turn back down because your oxygen cylinder is showing low oxygen. So Johan's first response was to say, no, what nonsense, I'm going to go. And he just put his mask back and started walking. And then his guide said, you can go to the top, but you don't have enough oxygen to come back down. And that's when Johan had to stop and think about whether he wanted to sacrifice his life or actually live to try again, which is what he did, as you know. So he then decided with great difficulty to turn back. He had the courage to turn back, which is also important. Sometimes in life, things go wrong. In fact, every time things go wrong. We know this, right? Some very few times things go right, but very often things go wrong. They don't go according to plan. We can plan and plan and plan. And things go completely connected. But we need to think about how do we proceed from there? What can we do? What are the decisions we make? Right? He had to think about the impact if he continued. What would like his friends and family are back in Sri Lanka waiting for him to return. He had a responsibility to come back to all of them. And he had the courage and the bravery to turn back, which is very important. Which a lot of people, a lot of mountaineers don't do, which is why there are about 200 dead bodies close to the summit of Everest of people who did not turn back when they should have turned back. So I'm very, very grateful that he did turn back. And 2 years later, he went back and completed the journey. So for me, I started at 8 p.m. and then I remember at one point, it was just beautiful. This is the kind of scenery and we were really above the clouds. This is called the Northeast Ridge. The Southeast Ridge. Yeah, the climbing from the south. And you can see the Hillary Step is somewhere along this way. So it's a beautiful ridge walk, but very, very steep. And I remember at one point I could see the moon on one side and the sun on one side and the sunrise. And as I got to the top, the sun was also rising. And I remember my guide said, okay, after a few minutes, I couldn't believe I was there. And the first thing I did was to give him a hug and say thank you, because I would never have made it without his support and guidance. And then he took a photograph of this picture. And that's my guide there, Sherpa Ankarma, who, for him, of course, it was his 5th time to the summit. So he was like, okay, this is like, normal for him. I was just stunned. I couldn't believe I was there. And then I had a photograph of my parents that I took with me. My father had passed about 3-4 years. He had passed away before Everest in 2014, actually, 2 years before. But I knew he was with me. And I took the photograph because I was fortunate growing up that I was given many opportunities to climb trees at home. I grew up in the Himalayas, and we had many trees in our garden: coconut tree, jack tree, mango tree, guava tree, hamakahakma, and I could even climb the coconut trees. But because I was encouraged by my parents, they didn't say don't climb. They actually said, if you're climbing, climb properly, and actually taught me how to climb safely. So for me, that was something that helped me throughout my journey. And I hope many of you also have those opportunities, but it made a huge difference to me. So I'm very grateful to them for that opportunity. So this is just a photograph from the summit. My video died, so this is not much of a video to share, but the sunrise, you can just about see the sunrise from the left-hand side. And then, of course, Nagga wage නෙමෙයි, සිංහල කියනවා නම් Nagga වගේ නෙමෙයි, මහින්දක් තියෙනවා. Now once you get to the top, there is no helicopter waiting for you at the top to bring you back down. You have to walk all the way back down. Now from Camp 4 to the summit was about a 9-hour journey. Coming back down took another 14 hours. So this is the summit and the park. You can just about see it along the beach there. Took another 14 hours to get to Camp 2. And I remember I was very scared because a lot of people get tired on the way back, exhausted, and you think, okay, you climb now, like, it's okay, but no, there is no room for mistakes. Because if you accidentally don't slip into your safety rope and you take a step, you can fall hundreds and thousands of feet to your death. No problem. So we have to really be very careful every single step, just consciously think about what we're doing as we walk up. And then, as you know, Johan went back 2 years later to complete the journey. And he was really fortunate because he had this beautiful view. It was after many, many years, it was a very clear day that in that year that he climbed it in 2018. So he managed to capture this video, which I will share with you. And you can actually see the curvature. අපි ලෝකේ ගෝලයක් කියලා දන්නේ කොහොමද? මේ පින්තූරයෙන් පේනවා shape එක ඇත්තට පේනවා. So the curvature of the earth is actually quite visible in this video. So this is from the summit of Everest. This is a view. So that's the path. You can see people coming up from the south side, from Nepal, the route we took. And the other side is Tibet or China, the north side. The statue wasn't there when I went in 2016, so someone has taken it after that. Yes, this is my final slide, and I would like to end here by saying that there's a quotation by Sir Edmund Hillary, and I suppose many of you know who he was. Together with Tenzing Norgay, Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay were the first 2 people in the world to climb Mount Everest in 1953. Something that Hillary said is something that resonates with me very much. He said, "It is not the mountain we conquer, but ourselves." And this is really very true because there's no way to conquer Everest. I never conquered anything. I did not conquer Mount Everest. I did not conquer nature because you cannot conquer nature. It's really arrogant to think that you can. But I did conquer my mind by believing in myself when I had to. I did conquer my fears, so many fears. My biggest fear was not coming back alive from this journey, but I wanted to do it. So I had to conquer my own fears of death. And thirdly, and most importantly, as a woman, I was able to, or I feel something we all need to be doing, is to also conquer gender stereotypes. Because these stereotypes only will prevent us from being the best that we can be. So remember to, as you proceed in your own journey in life, which is much harder than climbing Everest, I hope you remember to conquer your mind, conquer your fears, and conquer your genders, and conquer all gender stereotypes in everything that you do. So on that note, I will stop here and wish all of you the strength and courage that both Johan and I needed to climb this mountain. And I hope you find that same strength and courage in all the mountains of life that you will also climb in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Jayanthi, and we are honored to have you here to share a glimpse of your journey. You clearly depicted that what you conquer is really beyond the summit. I'm sure that all the ones in here were inspired a lot, and each and every fact was interesting. This opportunity is for you who gathered here. The chat box is open for your questions. So during the session also, we got some questions. The first question we got was, what kind of stuff should be included, especially in the backpack, than a regular hike when preparing to summit Mount Everest?
Okay, that's a big question. Thank you for the question, Danisha. So we had a lot of luggage. I mean, if you notice, all the gear that we were wearing is critical in order for us to stay alive on the mountain. The kind of boots we wore, the kind of big suit we had. But on a daily basis, we would carry generally, if that's, I'm wondering, on a daily basis when we were walking from one camp to another camp, we would generally carry some snacks, water, water which is in an insulated pack so that it doesn't freeze, and like a windproof jacket, gloves, goggles. We had to wear these big sort of ski goggles because at some points, if there were snowstorms, you could also go blind if you didn't wear the correct equipment for the snow, or snow blindness was something that was common. So there are a few more things than a regular hike. When you're prepared to whole summit the mountain, there's a lot of, I mean, we had to carry our sleeping bag. We had to have 2 sets of sleeping bags that we keep up when we go to base camp and we go to camp 1. We keep one sleeping bag at the top, then come back down. So there's quite a lot of gear actually. I had about 6 pages of Excel sheets of only just the gear. So that's quite a lot. Our daily pack had not such a lot, maybe about 10 kilos or 12 kilos we were carrying on a daily basis, but the gear was critical if we wanted to also come back down in one piece. I hope that answers the question.
I hope that clarified the question pretty much. So the next question is, highest number of deaths have been reported during 2014 and 2015 due to avalanches. How did you prepare to overcome this challenge in 2016?
Yeah, it was very scary, to be honest, because of the 2 big disasters in 2014 and 2015. And so I guess we had to just be prepared to turn back in case something went wrong. But nature is something we cannot control, right? But what we can control. So what are the risks that we could mitigate? One is to go with one of the best companies, which had a good, not the most expensive, but a company which had a good reputation for telling you to turn back if you are not doing it correctly. Not a company that will just take you up at any cost. There are lots of mountaineering companies which will say, "Api adu ganata kalla den, labai discount denna kalla den." You like a discounted rate, you never come back. Those are the companies where lots of people die. They never come back. So it's important, if any of you are planning this, what are the risks that you can control? If you go with a good mountaineering company, the risks are mitigated. Now, the mountaineering company we went with was International Mountain Guides. They will not take you as a climber unless you have climbed 2 other mountains that are of 6,000 or 6,500 meters. So you can't just say, I have climbed all the mountains in Sri Lanka, I want to climb Everest. They won't take you. But there are other mountaineering companies that will take you, but that is a risk. So even with mountaineering, it's really important. The training, the preparation, which is why together with Johan and I, the training happened over 5 years. My own training was from 2003 to 2016, 13 years. That training is the preparation. So even though there were avalanches in 2014 and the earthquake in 2015, it was scary because the weather can really go crazy again, but we could do everything in our control. So the company, the training, the gear to buy, I was on the internet every single day after work, Googling which brands, why this brand and not that brand, for the suit, the boots, the cap, the glove, the goggles, everything, right? It really takes all that planning to, that was one way to overcome the fear and the challenge. So I'll move to the next question. Is that okay?
As a Sri Lankan, were there any barriers or difficulties that you faced?
Well, many. I think one being we're from sea level, so it's hard to train in Sri Lanka because I guess we are lucky in one way that India is so close, so the Himalayan mountains are very close to us. But in our own country, so that's a cost. It takes money to go to fly to India or Nepal and train and do those courses. Those are one of the barriers. Just living in Sri Lanka means we don't have any ice climbing practices. We have lots of hiking, trekking, and even rock climbing now, which is fantastic. It's the best way to also learn because you need to learn about rope skills. Mountaineering is not only just climbing a mountain. You need to have those skills, the technical skills also. So some of the barriers with that. I think also just when you try to do in Sri Lanka something that's out of the box, out of the ordinary, people don't take you seriously. They just think you're mad. So as I said before, so it was not easy for us to get sponsors. Johan is someone who has been, because he had a chain of salons, he's from the corporate sector, so he had lots of contacts at least, and that's how we were able to get quite a few sponsors. But it's not easy. I think those are two things I can think about. As a woman, particularly, again, people just think you can't do anything. Not something so dangerous as this. Media, when I came back, some of the newspapers journalists said, "Madam, යන්න කලින් නම් අපි article එකක් ලිව්වේ නෑ. We didn't even write an article before you went because we didn't think you'll make it." And we thought it was quite bad that you were doing this and taking such a risk because you're a woman. So I think there are these stereotypes, also some of the barriers that I had to face in this journey.
Those are some big words for the young hikers, for the inspiration. And we got a question from the YouTube live. It is said that there are dead bodies along the trail. Is that true?
Yes, absolutely. That is true. When we went in 2016, because of the earthquake and avalanche in 2014 and 2015, no one really summited in those years. So there was a lot of snowfall. So I was fortunate that I was not able to see any dead bodies. But during our climb, there were some people who also died. And Johan, unfortunately, did see, I think, 2 or 3 people who had died on this journey, not in our group, but from another group. We actually saw someone fall. We first thought it was just a backpack falling, but later it turned out it wasn't a backpack, it was a climber who had not clipped into the rope properly and fell to his death. So death on the mountain is quite a common occurrence. In fact, when you climb from the other side, from Tibet, you can actually see many more bodies that are used as landmarks along the way. But that was something you had to be prepared for, that you may not come back. And I had to also prepare for that. I wrote my last will before I went, because as I said, the weather is something we cannot control. I can control everything else. What I can control, I tried my best. But the weather, if there was an earthquake, an avalanche, and I died on the mountain, I had to be ready for that however hard. At least I thought I'll have a good week. but yeah, so it's true.
We are manifesting the difficulty of your journey from your answers from the for the questions. So next question is, how did you manage to climb amidst the low temperature and heavy backpack?
It's not easy. I guess, Dishan, right? Thank you for the question. It's not easy at all. In fact, the low temperature was something that was really tough because even at night, it was really difficult to fall asleep. I remember we would get our water bottles. They were like these 1 liter big Nalgene water bottles. We would put hot water, would put it into our jacket and go to sleep. But in 1 hour, those were cold. And then it was so cold that many times I couldn't sleep. I would have to sit up in my tent. I would keep my backpack leaning at the back of the tent and wait till morning. At least in the daytime, you had things to do. You're walking, so you're doing something, chatting, whatever. But at night, I really struggled to sleep because of the cold. And backpack, I mean, the oxygen cylinder weighs about 8 kilos. Yeah, but at that height, it feels like 80 kilos when you're at 7,000, 8,000 meters. I guess this comes down to your mind as well, and the training that comes before. That was all important.
So moving on to the next question. The next question is, what encouraged you to summit Mount?
I guess I mentioned this right in the beginning. It has actually been a childhood dream for me. It's something I've been wanting to do since I was 8 years old. I think I might have seen it in a National Geographic magazine, which my parents would get when I was young. And then over the years, just reading about the stories of people who tried, but simply a dream that I've really wanted to do since I was young. But never imagined it's possible. But now I know it can be if you really work hard over years sometimes.
We have another question. What is your view on the vastly increasing numbers of Everest summiters as we saw back in 2019 and the impact of commercial summiting on the ecosystem surrounding Everest?
That's a very good question, Jani. Thank you for asking that. So this is a huge problem. I mean, what's unfortunate is that the Nepal government earns a huge amount of money and income through charging people climbing permits. I think it's 11,000 US dollars per person to climb this mountain, like park fees, like we have if you go to Horton Plains National Park, there's a park fee. But that money doesn't trickle down to the people who live on the mountains, who are the people who support the expedition. And the other problem is that lots of people all over the world who have money, but no experience of climbing anything. They have pretty much just woken up one day and said, bucket list, I'm going to now climb Everest. And they have the money for it. And then there are the companies who have no experience or very low experience who will take anyone because they also want money. So this is a huge problem because you take climbers who have no experience, very often it's fatal, they don't come back or they're injured. So I think that just obviously needs to be some regulation around this, but it's not happening. So for us, we were trying to be very conscious of our own green footprint, which is why we went with the mountaineering company. Before we went, we chose them. We had an interview with them where we questioned them on all the questions we had, including how do they choose people to climb? Do they have a sort of requirement? And that's when I said they make sure that we climb before. But also we want to know what they do with their garbage. So they pay extra for the Sherpas to carry everything back down, even the toilet stuff, which is carried back down. But everything that is why we had to pay for all of that. And for us, that was part of making sure that when we go up there, we make sure that we're not polluting even more. But it is still a problem, and I definitely cannot disagree with you. It is a huge problem currently. And many other mountains actually in the Himalayas. One thing that has been happening more recently is that I think they've also started paying Sherpas to bring back empty oxygen cylinders because quite a few companies just throw out their cylinders all over the place and pollute the mountain. So there is a new system by the Nepali government where they pay the Sherpas, supplying the Sherpas, to bring back cylinders and they get an income through that as well. But it's not enough. That's a problem.
Next question is, can you suggest an economically hiking gear brand for novice hikers?
So in Sri Lanka, actually, I think the best one I can suggest is Quechua, which is available at Decathlon. They are a global brand, but Decathlon I have found is a little bit more at least it's a good brand, and they have some things that are more economical. The Decathlon as overall, that's their idea is of being able to be affordable to many people. I wouldn't recommend any other brand because I don't know them as well, but in Sri Lanka, this one is available, so I would suggest that. Yeah. Most of the things from Decathlon, their own brands, they're generally a sports outdoor gear store, everything, so that would be one place to look.
We got another question from our YouTube live. How many oxygen cylinders for whole journey?
Sorry, what was the question again? Please repeat.
How many oxygen cylinders for your whole journey?
So two. So that's also something, the part of the cost that we pay the mountaineering company is that basically we each climber gets 2 oxygen cylinders. And if you want an extra cylinder, you have to let them know 1 month before you start, not even 1 month. We start the journey in end of March, in April. We have to let them know in January, and it costs $6,000. So no one, I mean, obviously Johan and I didn't go for that option, but it's 2 cylinders. So that's what everyone gets.
Another question from YouTube live. What was the temperature on the top of the mountain?
Good question. It's minus 60 Celsius, 60, which is the normal temperature at the summit of Everest. So very, very cold. It's so cold that you are unable, if you take your goggles off, your corneas can freeze and you can go blind in a few days. If you remove your gloves, you can get frostbite in a few seconds. Frostbite is where the nerve endings on your fingertips can die, and then you have to amputate your fingers. So Johan got a little bit of frostbite on that first time, and which we discovered later. So when he came back, he had to, luckily it didn't get really bad, which is good, but very cool.
I can remember how you interpreted that coldness for the media at that time. So the next question is, normally how much approximately it will cost to climb for?
This amount varies from person to person, from company to company actually, the mountaineering company we go with. For us, basically, what was important, as I said right from the beginning, is that we didn't just want to climb the mountain, but we wanted to come back safely or go with a company that could tell us to turn back if things are not looking good. Weather is bad, we are not in good shape, just make us turn back, right? Our life was more important than climbing this mountain. So we, from all the research that we did, we went to the International Mountain Guides. They are seen as a mid-range company, but it is very expensive. So we had to spend, what was it? Let's see. I think it was about 30,000 US dollars. From that amount, 11,000 US dollars goes to Nepal government for the climbing permit. Then about 10,000 US dollars is for all the gear that we had to buy. We had to buy the gear, and the balance goes to the balance 10 is for the mountaineering company for the 2 months of food and the oxygen cylinders and the guides who are with you throughout after base camp, and if there's medical tent and all that. So this, depends if you are someone who I don't know, has a lot of experience of climbing mountains, then you might want to do it more on your own, where you find a place to go and stay up to base camp. There are places now, many other places. So there are ways to cut down the costs, but I think essentially you have to do your research, a lot of research, online research primarily is what I did, before you decide to say, I'm going to go with this company. The price should not be what makes you choose that company. The cheapest thing should not be the factor. For Everest, no. Go climb other mountains. For Everest, cheap may not, I don't know, it may not be the best way to come back down as well. So be careful about that. That's the thing. So it's very expensive, which is why, as I said, I was very privileged, very fortunate that there were sponsors who came through to support this journey, because if not for the sponsors, I would never have been able to climb. I can't do that for sure. In relatively, it's a cost of a big car, like an SUV, like a big Jeep car or one of those So some people spend on cars, some people spend it to climb a mountain with sponsorship.
The next question is, how does this experience felt for a mountaineer in Sri Lanka, especially the health situation?
So actually right now with the health situation, I mean, I know that there is an interprovincial travel restriction, but in a sense, when we talk about COVID-19, the main problem is that it spreads in enclosed spaces, air-conditioned spaces, offices, malls, supermarkets, right? But going outdoors, if you live out of Colombo somewhere, if you are, I don't know, I mean, we have like Mora University, right? The Golgoda Lake is there. I'm sure there are many places to walk, or there are many other cycle paths now in and around Colombo. If you're living out of Colombo, it can be really. We have so many places. I feel, in a sense, if you are able to go outdoors and enjoy nature, that's good for your health. You get exercise, and you're not as, I mean, I guess you can't go in a huge crowd as a club, but you can go in two or three, perhaps. I don't know what the rules are, but maybe obviously not in a big crowd, right? Um, I feel, in a sense, doing outdoor sports or going into a forest with one or two other people is safer than actually going into a supermarket or even going into an office or a mall or in Majestic City or in office spaces which have air conditioning, because that's where you can really spread the virus.
We are getting so many questions from the chat box and YouTube live also. So the next question is, any spiritual experiences throughout the journey, such as meeting people who go to these areas to meditate?
Okay, so I didn't actually meet any people who pretty much went to meditate. I think they will stay away from the Mount Everest route because there are too many people. It's too crowded there. So I'm sure there are people who go to meditate to the mountains, but probably go to the more quieter, the more less, I don't know, known parts, so they can have some peace and quiet. But I remember actually for me, um, when I was climbing the mountain, I remember when I got to base camp, those first couple of days, it was really very easy to complain about everything, about the cold, the food, not being able to sleep, just being cold all the time. And then I realized it's actually disrespectful to the mountain to be complaining so much, because no one really forced me to do this. I wanted to climb this mountain. And so I would actually talk to the mountain daily and say, look, Chamalungma, which is a Nepali name, and Sherpa call it that, and Sangamartha, which is the Indian name. And I would say, please let us climb and come back down. And because when you sit outside your tent at night, stars, it's like another planet. I can't describe it. It's unbelievable. Very cold, but so beautiful. And up there where there are no trees, it's just white and rocks, and that's about it. So I feel in many ways the mountain was really good to me, because the Nepalis also believe that the mountain chooses you. You cannot choose the mountain. You try to climb Everest. And when I came back down from Everest, my teammate, my tent mate from Aussie, she told me this, and she's like, for some reason the mountain chose you, because in our team of 8 people, there was only myself and 2 others who made it to the summit. The others, for some reason, just could not, they got sick, or there was a malfunction in the oxygen cylinder, something happened. And initially I was wondering, why did the mountain choose me? It felt unfair because there were 2 of us climbing, right? I didn't plan to become the first Sri Lankan. That was not my dream. My dream was just to climb this mountain. That's all I wanted. I'm not a huge public person. I hate social media. I'm not all public. But now I have to use the public space, or I've been forced into it. But now when I think about it, I realize that maybe the reason is because I hope all of you out there can see that if I can do that, and if you're a woman, don't let anyone tell you that you can't do something just because you're a woman. Right? Whether you're a woman or a man, or a guy or a girl, it doesn't matter. If you are passionate about a certain sport, a certain subject, anything you want to do, you should follow that dream, and don't let anyone tell you that you should not be doing that because of your gender. So for me, I feel that the reason maybe the mountain has chosen me, I'm very grateful for that. And if people told me, there were people who told me don't climb, why are you doing this? but I was fortunate I had support from my family and friends as well.
The next question is, do you hope to summit K2?
I would love to one day, but it's a very dangerous challenge. I would need to practice so much more to have to do that. Like in fact, when I live in India, in the Himalayas, what's more ice climbing? Because it is, as you know, if you whoever asked that question, if you know about K2, it is called the Killer Mountain, the world's most deadliest mountain. 1 in 4 people do not come back. If I climb it, I do want to come back or even attempt it. I would like to attempt it. I don't know whether I'll make it, but I would like to. Again, I never know whether I will or not. It is uh, it's exciting to think about it, but I have no serious plans at the moment. But I would like to one day.
The next question is, what are the pros of taking the Nepal?
Yeah, so the pros of the Nepal side, I mean, one is the rescue can be faster because now helicopters can come up to camp too. For me, the Nepal side, why I liked it is that it's a classic route. It's a route that Tendi Norgay and Edmund Hillary took. So I've heard and read so much about the Khumbu Ice Fall and the CW, the Western Khumbu, all these landmarks, right? The Yellow Band, the Hillary Stone, all these things are in the Nepal side. And the Tibetan side also, I think you drive up quite a bit to base camp, which is not good to really drive in the mountains. You need to walk so that your body can acclimatize and walk slowly so that your body can get used to the low oxygen. But I think, yeah, so we pretty much chose the Nepal side because it was more the classic route. And the mountaineering company that we were going with also was actually International Mountain Guide. They were using this route as well, but that was a route that we wanted. Sorry, I don't know more details than that, but there are people who prefer the Tibetan side and they will probably argue that that side is much better. I'm a little bit concerned about the driving up to Tibet, up to their base camp. Because when you don't give your body time to acclimatize, and especially if you're from sea level, like Sri Lanka, that 2 weeks to get to base camp is critical so that your body is slowly getting used to the lower levels of oxygen, right? So that you can proceed with the journey.
As the time flies, we are going to make this the last question of the Q&A session. So the last question is, could you tell us what was the full budget to climb to the summit and to the base camp separately?
So I actually haven't climbed only to base camp. So the full budget I mentioned was 33. So I think if they come to 9 million rupees, rupees, huge amount, as I told you, covered by the sponsors. So grateful to them. And that is a budget from Kathmandu. When we get to Kathmandu, we have to get a flight to Kathmandu, and from Kathmandu, the budget includes that small plane from Kathmandu to Lukla. We had a helicopter because planes were not flying. There was some storm, so then they got us a helicopter, and we had to actually start from lower than Lukla anyway. But Kathmandu to Lukla, and then the 2 weeks accommodation up to base camp, and then the 6 weeks of accommodation, food, the guides, the cylinders, insurance we had to get separated. That, but medical, there were doctors in the team. If you were sick, you could go to the first aid tent, and you didn't have to pay extra for that. All of that, and I guess IMG works with a company in Nepal called Bayul Adventures. If any of you are interested, I can always send you their contact. In fact, anyone who's asked me for contact details of a reputed mountaineering company, I would only mention Bayul Adventures because the people who were doing this operation, they knew what they were doing. And we heard of stories of so many guides and Sherpas who did not know what they were doing, and companies who did not know what they were doing, which is why people were getting sick, dying, not coming back on these journeys. So I'll actually put that in the chat box if you want. If anyone here wants to, I don't think they have a website, but I will just put in a number for them. There is a person called Sherpa Ang Jangbu, who is a person who actually is the main person behind this company. Just find his number and put it around. Always call him up. You can always call him, get a quotation. So his number is, you can WhatsApp him. 010. So the number is +9 77 980 102 4620. So call them up if you want a quote or WhatsApp them. But please do your research before you decide to go with a company that is cheap, because your life is more important than climbing this mountain. Seriously, about the safety and the risk factor. I know that money is a huge problem and a huge challenge, but don't risk your life if that's what it takes. Unnecessary. We all take risks. I mean, walking on the road, you can get knocked out by a bus, right? So, yeah. I hope that's it.
We are going to wind up the Q&A session because the allocated time is over now. Thank you again, Ms. Jayanthi, for sharing your immense knowledge with us, and we are honored to have you here. Now, I would like to invite Harit Hansaka, the Vice President Finance of the Mora Hiking Club, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Good evening, everybody. So here we came to the end of another interview session of MHC Talks. It's my privilege to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion on behalf of Mora Hiking Club, the audience, and on my own behalf. First of all, a big thank you to Sri Lankan adventurer, women rights activist, a motivational speaker, and most importantly, the first Sri Lankan woman to summit Mount Everest, Ms. Jayanthi Kuru-Utumpala, for giving us a valuable time and sharing experiences with us. It was really interesting and very useful to know about teamwork, getting ready for the climb, and the challenges you faced. I'm sure your words have inspired many of us hikers, including me. Then I must mention our deep sense of appreciation for the senior treasurer of Mora Hiking Club, senior lecturer Suranga Jayasen. The huge strength behind all of us. He was behind us, guiding us through every difficult situation. Thank you, sir, for being happy pillar of our club. Next, I would like to take this opportunity to place on record our hearty thanks to our sisters and brothers of the Alumni Club for the guidance they have extended to all of us. Well, this event didn't happen overnight. The wheels started rolling weeks ago. It required planning and a bird's eye for details. We have been fortunate enough to be backed by a very motivated and dedicated organizing team. I can't thank enough for your hard work to make this event realization. Finally, this event will not be this much successful without your participation. So I would like to thank every one of you for your participation. Thank you again. Have an enjoyable evening.
And that brings us to the end. I'd like to thank you for your interest and attention. While you are staying safe at your home, stick around with Mora Hiking Club to encounter a lot of new interesting episodes under MHC Talks. Follow us on Mora Hiking Club official Facebook page, Instagram page, as well as YouTube channel to get new updates. The links are given in the chat box. Remember, lives and feelings are measured not by the distance of miles, but